Hello everyone, I'm Daz and welcome to American Civil War and UK History. This presentation is available as a video on our YouTube channel or as a podcast from wherever you get your podcast from. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up. And to keep up to date with everything American Civil War and UK History, check out our website where you will find blog posts, podcasts and links to all of our social media pages. The link is available in the podcast description. And joining me today is co-founder of Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association and honorary secretary of the London branch of US Civil War Veterans, and also a founder of that too, Gina Denham. Welcome, Gina.
Hi, Daz. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Excellent. Same. Happy 2025 to everyone. This is the first podcast of the year that we are recording on the anniversary of the formation of Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association, where of course we were founded on January the 14th 2022 after two people, me and Gina, got together and came up with this harebrained idea of recognising everyone. Now Gina, what is our aim and what is our mantra? Please let everyone
I'd say our mantra is raising awareness and monuments too, and we are the hashtag the Monumental Project. So collaboration, remembrance, and just banging the drum for those British-based US Civil War veterans. I'll give you a quick insight. I'm constantly trying to look for them on the records. I think we're nearly up to 700 that we've now found. The work will continue, obviously.
Excellent. And I love that. We're going to have that on a t-shirt, aren't we? That saying, the mantra.
Well, raising monuments and awareness. It goes either way.
It goes either way, but it's a fantastic saying, just like the London branch, they had their saying, didn't they?
Yeah, so, not for ourselves, but for our country. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that for me is definitely we need to adopt that as our saying. But anyway, 2024 has been an amazing year for us. We continue to grow. We made great progress. And obviously on today's episode, we are going to look back on 2024 through pictures. Now, for those of you that are listening via audio, and I know there will be a lot of you guys, we will be discussing and looking at pictures via a PowerPoint presentation. So if you would like to see the pictures, please head over to our YouTube channel, American Civil War and UK History. But we will try our best to describe what we are looking at for those of you that are in the car or you're jogging or you're doing something but you can't access YouTube. Okay, let's bring up the first picture and Gina is going to explain what we are looking at.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about this. Okay. This is what you're looking at here is a picture that was taken in Canada, and in the centre of it you can see John Davis with his white beard and his one of his medals, surrounded by one of his family, some of his family. Now, a best guess, in the background you can see a man holding a flag wearing like a white, I think they call it a fedora cap. I'm not sure, might not be a fedora cap, but he's got a beard and he looks like John Davis because that is John Davis's son. Now, John Davis went out there, I can definitely tell you, in June 1914. It was a family celebration and his daughter was there. So basically that picture, there's a couple of others that exist, but that's John Davis in Canada. The curious thing is, what I like about John Davis is that he managed to get over to Canada. The liner that took him over, I can't remember the name of it, but it took him 4 days to go from Liverpool to Canada. He was doing his usual, a bit like what you and I do, Daz. He was banging the drum because the local press did an article, and he was there within about 4 days. And the press did an article about his role as secretary of the London branch. And when I was writing about this the other day, because obviously I'm doing the book about the London branch, and I wondered what he must have been thinking when he went across taking 4 days. He'd done that journey as a young man in the Merchant Navy. He'd obviously served in the Civil War about, like modern vessels as they were, these ocean liners in the 1900s. If I remember correctly, and I must try and find the name of the vessel he went on, but the vessel that he went over on was sunk in 1917 because it was a troop carrier. So yeah, John Davis and his family, and in Canada in 1914.
And through your research, how did you actually come across this photograph? Because it's fantastic.
Ah, yes. Okay. So this photograph, amongst several others, are an outcome of obviously. So you and I founded Monument to UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association a couple of years ago, and obviously, as you know, and not everybody may know, but because of our ongoing research, we were coming into contact with quite a lot of descendants of these London branch veterans, and it just seemed to me a little bit like John Davis, that we were coming across these descendants, but none of us were connected. And so that's obviously the premise of why we decided to create on the 20th of September 2023, on the anniversary of the original founding of the London branch, Descendants of the London branch American Civil War veterans. Well, as of yesterday, we've got 92 members on our roll. Like John Davis, he would accept people into the organisation who weren't Civil War veterans. Some of the residents had no Civil War service, but they basically followed the ethos of, supporting these old veterans. So as an outcome, and what a fantastic outcome, because we found out so much information through reconnecting all the descendants. And in some respects, we're kind of like the sons and daughters of the Union veterans of the Civil War. We follow their ethos, but obviously we're autonomous too. But a great outcome is these wonderful photographs and artifacts that we're getting from descendants, and we'll probably cover them as we go through, Daz. So this photograph, amongst many others, came through connecting with descendants of the London branch. It's really excited about it because we're basically shining light on knowledge that has been almost lost, and we're putting the pieces of the jigsaw back together. So, the celebration that's going on in that photograph is kind of how I feel now, because I'm sort of celebrating that we're remembering these people, and that's really important to me. I can't remember the name, so I apologise, but basically John Davis was a missionary for the London City Mission
Yes.
for over 30 years. So what I decided to do, and just to is contact the London City Mission, and you and I have walked past it. It's just in Tower Bridge Road. And I reached out to them and said, look, we're doing this research about the London branch. Could I come along? And we went along. We gifted them some. You can see the person there from the one of the archivists there from the London City Mission. Some of our newsletters for the Descendants, which are exclusively for descendants of the London branch. And I found some great articles that concerned Arthur William Fraser Smith, who'd served in the 80th New York and became the successor to John Davis. So I'm trying to think, that would have been quite early. I think that was in the summer, because I'm fairly, we got along. They basically gave me all the books I wanted, and just added more knowledge to the knowledge pool. I believe that when obviously people give us information, that we make sure that we reciprocate and give them the knowledge, because I don't want it to die with me. And obviously that's a great why you do what you do, Daz, with these podcasts, that we're putting the information out there. So yeah, it was I always, on that same day, and I'm guessing you might cover it, because it's so close to where the London branch were based at Gedling Street. I naturally popped around there on that day to visit the London branch headquarters as part of that ongoing research. So that's the archives at London City Mission, just south of Tower Bridge in London.
Okay. And what was their reception like of you know, because obviously, like you said, you're sharing information with each other, and of course they have a lot of information, but of course you've got a lot of information too. So did it
Yeah.
line up, and what was their response and to your research and
Well, quite positive actually. And interestingly, I noticed that when we tried to get a blue plaque for John Davis in Southwark, I noticed that London City Mission made sure that they shared that post. So, they might not have been aware of John Davis and Arthur William Fraser Smith, because both of them were involved in like the temperance movement, etc. So I think there's always a return on that investment, that when you and I go out and sort of raise a bit of awareness, those who are more, particularly interested in it will build on it, etc. Never know, as we go through the presentation, there might be some examples of that. But yeah, I tend to get a positive reception. One of the things I will say is when I reach out to potential descendants, is the idea that they'll say, oh no, my ancestor couldn't have possibly been in America because obviously it was an American Civil War. And of course, then we have to play a bit of a role in educating them. I generally say, look, have a look on the 1861 census. And if you can't find your ancestor on the 1861 census, there's a good chance that it's because they were in America at the time. George Denham was, for example, my ancestor when he was, been out in America for about 10 years. So yeah, a good reception generally from people.
excellent. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to bring this up now, and I'll just do a little bit of an explanation myself, and then then you can take over. So obviously we formed, or you formed. Well, we sort of did it together, didn't we?
Yeah.
23rd of September 2023, you formed a Descendants of the London branch of US Civil War veterans.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, and you explained that it's sort of an exclusive club. You don't have to be a descendant, do you? And I'll let you explain a
No.
bit more in that in a moment. But one of the things you will get is campfire tales. Just to explain a little bit about campfire tales, and if people were interested in joining Descendants of the US Civil War veterans, how they would go about it.
Okay, so campfire tales, that phrase, you can just, again, at the top of that newsletter is a small image of John Davis and a little quote. And he basically, in essence, would say, these old blue coats, these old veterans would come to Bermondsey, they'd fraternise, jibber jabber, and tell their campfire tales fathoms long. And one of the things that I've found as I'm writing about the London branch is they sometimes were, I don't know how you'd put this, but they weren't always entirely truthful. You'll find some of them all claim to be in the hunt for John Wilkes Booth, and no doubt they were, but probably, most of the Union forces were hunting for John Wilkes Booth, but invariably you might find that the British press always said, oh, John Davis was involved in the hunt for John Wilkes Booth. Now, the newsletter and that photograph you see there on the front cover, so we'll try and always include a photograph, is a really fantastic photograph. That was taken in December 1912 at a memorial service for the then US Ambassador Whitelaw Reid. Now, Whitelaw Reid was revered by the British public. He was a correspondent during the American Civil War, and sadly he passed away. I think he was planning to stay in England, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. Now, the photograph you see there, that came from a descendant. There's a couple of examples of it in the press, but they weren't very clear. And what I like about that photograph, you're going to see John Davis in there. You can see William Blasey, who was with the Connecticut Artillery. You can see Richard Townley Booth, who was in Richard Townley Booth, etc. So yeah, Richard Townley Booth. I think he was in the 111th New York. You can see Maurice Wagg, the Medal of Honor recipient too. Now, sadly, we don't know who all these London branch veterans are, and obviously that's going to be probably for me a lifelong piece of work. But that photograph, yeah, that came from a descendant, and you're showing me an image on the image on the left. I'm not too sure about John Davis's choice of words, but he's basically with some African American students, and that image is taken from a book called The Souvenir, which John Davis sent to the successor for Whitelaw Reid, and that was William Hines Page. And the book called The Souvenir obviously had lots of information about the London branch. Harvard University Library have a copy of it, thank goodness. But that image you see on the left, where it says at the bottom, "We believe all men are created equal. We are not ashamed to fraternize with them." I'm not sure I'd use that phrase, but you can see him, he's got his staff there with the eagle on it, and he's again wearing that medal that he tended to wear. That's his own, if you like, Civil War medal there. If you see him in other pictures, he's wearing a different one. The picture on the right hand side, where they're all gathered up in Westminster, that's one of the earliest pictures of them wearing the London branch medal. So you can definitely see John Davis wearing it, and in the middle with a bowler hat, with his hands kind of clasped below his waist. That's William Blasey, and he's wearing a London branch medal too. There's a guy on the far right side, just in front of Maurice Wagg, the Medal of Honor recipient. We think that's either Fred or James Weir, but we're not 100% certain. And Fred and James both served in the Union Navy, but I believe it was James Weir, his brother, who was also a member of the London branch, deserted, so he never got his pension. Anyhow, so, but yeah, interesting pictures, all part of the knowledge pool.
Excellent. And I'm going to step back because I did step forward a couple of pictures there just so you can explain that picture in a bit more detail. But it is relevant to what you was just talking about. So obviously you did your research, you looked into the actual Descendant London branch medal type thing, veteran. And so you had some made, didn't you? So just explain a little bit about the process that you had to go through to make sure that you got it as authentic as you could.
Well, the story of this London branch medal. So by January 1911, press articles reported that at the next meeting of the London branch, there were pictures and badges. So John Davis had already set about getting some London branch medals. Now, what we do know, and obviously on that day that you and I first met, Daz, at the George Denham dedication at Pancras and Islington Cemetery, a guy called Pete Collins, who's one of the descendants of John Davis, came along and he showed me the medal, the London branch medal that John Davis had. So I did lots of research on it. So we had an image of it, and I realised that these medals were created by a company called Whitehead and Hogue, who were based out of New Jersey. Now, at their kind of peak, Whitehead and Hogue had offices all over the country. So what I did, I managed to get some examples of the different types, because basically they were like a novelty medal, if that's the best way to describe it. I can't think of another way of describing them. They weren't official medals, but they were novelty medals. And obviously you had Grand Army of the Republic posts who got versions made. You had different ones, fraternal medals. You had organisations like the Masons and stuff like that. So cut long story short, started doing the research, got some examples of similar medals to the London branch ones, and realised that with a bit of effort we could replicate that medal. Now, I can't sew, unfortunately, but thank goodness my mum, who's a descendant of the London branch members, can. And so we've started replicating these medals. Now, the biggest barrier, I've managed to find a company that can recreate the brasswork. We've obviously remade the logos for it, but the biggest barrier was getting the medal ribbon. But what I quite like is that we used Hodges medals or Hodges, I think Hodges badges, and they are based in New Jersey, of all places. So we've managed to replicate the original medal. So you can see on the left is the picture of the photograph that I took um, at the George Denham dedication when you and I first met. I always get amazed by that because so many ripples, so many things have happened because you and I met that day. You know, if I hadn't have had the dedication, you and I wouldn't have met, and a lot of the things that you and I are now doing would never have happened. You know, I always think it's pretty amazing. Others might not, but I do. So obviously, I took a photograph. And then from that, this idea that just kept eating away at me that actually we could make a medal for the Descendants honouring our London branch forebears. So obviously the difference you can see there is John Davis's says secretary. Our one says descendant, or so for example, your one will say president. Then you've got honorary member as well. So the idea is if we have people who join us and they desire to get a medal, then they can, you know, because we're really trying to make sure that we're raising awareness.
Mhm. Excellent. Thanks for
So,
explaining that. So, I mean, you have been a very, very busy. I mean, you're very busy anyway. You're literally into everything, but you really put your heart and soul into everything and recreating a lot of stuff. And one
mhm.
thing that we normally put on our graves is one of these.
Oh yeah,
Just explain. Obviously, that there's the molds there in the middle. We've got a picture of molds. Explain
yeah.
what that is and what it's symbolizes.
Yeah, so there will be a lots of you'll see across the United States and in the UK too, grave markers that will say things like Grand Army of the Republic, which is fine. But a lot of these veterans in the UK were not members of the Grand Army of the Republic, this fraternal organisation that was created after the Civil War to obviously support veterans, to lobby for better pension provisions. So it occurred to me that perhaps we needed to create something that honoured these veterans, but didn't put a grave marker that was inappropriate. Because not all of them were members, as I say, of the Grand Army of the Republic. I know some of them in the London branch were, but so we've created this now. What we've done first off at the moment, funny enough, Daz, I'm already working on it. These were created. I got somebody to create a 3D. You know, it's not really my world. I'm not that, but basically, I got somebody to create a 3D image, a 3D printed image of our logo, which you can see there in black. And then what I do, because I do a lot of casting for other hobbies and stuff, I then cast a resin version of it using brass powder so you can polish, etc. And then, of course, then we make these grave markers. And obviously, I'm developing the idea because the company that I've been using to create our brass replicas of medals, etc. I'm going to ask them if they can also create that in brass too. Hopefully, it will stay at a grave or wherever we apply these monuments for a reasonable amount of time before it gets nicked, before it gets stolen.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
that's one endeavour we did last year. Like you, Daz, I'm constantly thinking about ways to raise awareness.
Yes. And now I'm going to move on to something really important in 2024, and that is, of course, our only dedication that we. No, sorry, you did attend two. Sorry, I only
Yeah,
attended the one. But
yeah,
here we are. We was in Brighton, sunny Brighton. Now, it was the first warm day of the year. I think it was early
yeah,
May, or was it mid-May? It was an absolutely glorious, I would say,
yeah,
summer's day, even though we were technically in spring. It was
yeah,
attended by members of, the police and
yeah,
member from the US Embassy and members of SOSCAN,
yeah.
as well as others. And of course, his family and Daryl Rivers. We'll give you a big shout out too. So,
There
Gina,
he is.
explain the dedication.
Yeah, so a shout out to Brighton and Preston Cemetery that obviously allowed us to put a marker at his grave. So there's obviously different types of markers you can get, and sort a one of the ones that kind of just lay on the ground rather than upright. Um, Now, so I reached out. So obviously, what had appealed to me with John Heath is the fact that he was serving on the USS Owasco, and he was down at Pelican Point, and they went ashore on a foraging party because to get fresh provisions to avoid scurvy. And unfortunately, they went ashore on this rowboat, a cutter, and they got surprised by apparently some Confederate cavalry, and basically most of the crew was shot. And John Heath was basically he ended up 13 bullets went into him, 13 wounds. He ended up getting medically discharged from the Union Navy, but then he re-enlisted. And not only that, so he served out the rest of the Civil War in the Union Navy. Then he came back to Brighton and became a police officer in Brighton for 25 years until he passed away. Fast forward, like then obviously his story kind of inspired me, this kind of resilient individual, he not all those bullets. They couldn't get all of the bullets out of him. So basically, in that grave in Brighton are some 58 caliber Confederate rounds. That's just how my mind works. But we managed to contact his descendant, and from that we obviously created a dedication, and it was like you said, a fantastic day, well attended. We had lots of his grandchildren, great grandchildren, great grandchildren. We had a representative from the American Legion, which I'm trying to make sure that we always include now, because they kind of took the baton from the London branch when those last London branch veterans were dying out. The American Legion, based in #1 post in London, were represented that day. We obviously had the police, because that was important to me, because he was a retired police officer. We had the embassy, and represented through the Navy as well. So yeah, it was a great day. We were really blessed. And afterwards we retired to fraternise and jabber, just like John Davis said, and went to that pub afterwards. It was just a great day, and we really were blessed with some wonderful weather and good attendance. It was just good. I don't know about you on the dedications days, and I don't know whether we're going to talk about it, but they are really tiring for me emotionally, because obviously we're investing, we want it to be good. We want to give them the appropriate honour and respect, but there's a lot of emotional energy involved. And I don't know about you, but I'm totally exhausted afterwards. And I always think, oh, why do I do this? And then shortly after, I then get involved in getting the next headstones ordered. And as you well know, whether we'll cover it in this.
I think what people don't realise is there's a lot of legwork that goes in before a dedication. I mean, firstly, you have to obviously apply for the headstone. You have to get it. If it's coming from the USA, for instance, you have to obviously contact or find out if the person's got any relatives that are still alive, and there's many other aspects to this. It's not simply just turn up, have a dedication. There's many things that have to be done to make sure. And again, like you said, then it gets to the day, and I suppose it's an important day. And again, we wanted to go off without any hitches. And I get a little bit nervous as well, obviously, because I do a bit of public speaking as well. And it is quite, and yet again, I mean, I actually arrived on time this time, but I I had my young children with me, and just before we was about to start the dedication, my daughter needed to go to the toilet, and of course there was no toilets in the cemetery, so I had to then leave the cemetery. I had to get dressed, and again they are quite stressful, probably more stressful for you, but having all that family there as well. And I wanted to bring up the next thing because obviously the direct descendant of
Yes,
John Heath.
Stephen Heath.
So he was actually there, and again, you are dedicating somebody's relative, and as you know, you've been in that position because you had your own dedication for your own relative. But it's important that we make the right impression with these with people that this is their relative, that they've put their heart and soul into and research, because this guy knows his stuff, doesn't he, about his
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, he did know his stuff, but do you know what I was quite pleased about? Because there was, he brought along the cosh that originally belonged to John Heath as part of his duties as a police officer in Brighton. I found out some things about John Heath, in terms of his service as a cop, etc. But one of the things that occurred in the family, they thought that John Heath had served in the Confederacy as well as the Union. But the reason why that belief emerged is because obviously John Heath had enlisted in two different names. So I guess, these stories evolved. They might get, kind of corrupted, is for want of a better phrase. And so they believed that he'd served for the South too, but the evidence strongly refutes that John Heath definitely served honourably, and the fact that he went back for more after getting medically discharged and enlisting in a fake name or an alias name is quite incredible. And I just realised that with that, you can see me wearing a mariner's uniform, but that's also the first occasion where we wore our homage to the London branch by wearing our Descendants medals there too, which I've got to say they're reversible, those medals. So on the reverse is like the London branch lettering, silver on black ribbon. So the idea is that at appropriate occasions you can reverse it. So
Yes.
yes.
Now that cemetery is two cemeteries technically.
Yeah.
Now, what was fantastic is there is a very, very famous man connected to the
Yeah.
American Civil War, and I'll talk about that in 1 second. But there is also somebody in that actual cemetery
Yeah.
related to the Civil War as well. Is that correct?
Correct. Henry Holden, who was a Medal of Honor recipient, connected with Custer's Last Stand. Clearly not at Custer's Last Stand, but apparently he was involved on the periphery of it, whereby he brought up some ammunition, as I understand it, and as an outcome, became a recipient of the Medal of Honor. So he's not too far from where John Heath is buried is Henry Holden's grave, and I'm going to say it's marked. It's got an official headstone there.
Yes, and in the cemetery next door is Colonel Fremantle, and of
That's
course,
it.
Colonel Fremantle was present during the Battle of Gettysburg. He was a British observer. He was on the Confederate side. For those of you familiar with the movie, will know he's on that, or portrayed on that. Now, me and Daryl Rivers, big shout out to Daryl, went round and found the grave, and we did a great video for Emerging Civil War, and it was Emerging Civil War's top YouTube video of 2024 with over 8,000 views. So go and check out Emerging Civil War's YouTube channel. As many of you know, I am social media manager for Emerging Civil War as well. But yeah, go and check that out because it's an amazing little connection. And of course, if you're visiting Brighton and you're interested in American Civil War, we encourage you to go and visit these American Civil War veterans, and of course Colonel Fremantle. So anyway, I'm going to move on to something really, really important now. And do you know what? One of the highlights of my year was being gifted one of these. So here we go. Tell us about these, Gina.
Okay, so again, another outcome of the Descendants group. So we had a member, and they were the descendant of Thomas Vokins, who was, I think, the 93rd member of the London branch. I stand corrected. He lived down in the South Coast, And when this descendant contacted me, they said, "Look, we've got some medals of my ancestor. I don't really know too much about them, of course." Then I looked at them and I was like, "Oh my goodness, you've actually got an original London branch medal." Now we know the provenance behind this, and so what you see there in the photograph is a copy of it's an original 1886 Grand Army of the Republic medal in the middle, and then on the right you see Thomas Fokin's London branch medal. And as you can see, the London branch medal is slightly smaller and it depicts what is the London branch brand, which is obviously a sailor and a soldier shaking hands. And then around the outside of it, it says London branch American Civil War veterans, September 20th, 1910. So now on the left-hand side of that photograph, again, for comparison purposes, you see my Grand Army of the Republic medal, and then you can see a medal that kind of looks like a Maltese cross, and you can see the other medals. Now, these medals that belong to Thomas Vokins were described in newspaper articles, etc. Now, earlier on, we have one photograph that exists of Thomas Vokins. He's not in the image that you see there, but when Whitelaw Reid was conveyed to back to the United States, the train went from London, and so all the London branch veterans saw him off as the casket was then taken south to Southampton. And I think it was the HMS Natal that basically was tasked with the duty of conveying Whitelaw Reid back to New York. And on the dock in Southampton was Thomas Vokins wearing his medals. And it was probably one of the last occasions Thomas Vokins ever wore that London Branch medal that you see there to the right, because he then passed away in 1913. And again, so through the help of the Descendants, I said, "Look, for me, is it possible that I could replicate that medal?" And as I say, you've seen earlier that I can do casting using silicon casts. So I drove, it was a 400-mile round trip. I drove from where I live in Essex to the other side of the country, took all my casting equipment, went and met the Descendant, which was great. So you could, the facts, and there you go. So that's Jane. And so we went along. I gifted Jane a replica of the London Branch medal. You can see that image there on the right, where she's holding our replica of the London Branch medal, and also a photograph of her ancestor, Thomas Vokins. And what we did, we gifted her, through her kindness, lots of material, merchandise relating to the Monumental Project, and also you've got the memorial cards that were given when John Davis notified the London Branch veterans that one of their comrades had passed away. So yeah, it was a 400-mile round trip, but so worth it. And to have a brass copy, because of the original medal, is something that I never ever imagined. That day that you and I met, at Pancras and Finchley Cemetery, to think several years later, the things that you and I have done together, the places we have gone, and just the different lived experiences, all because that day that you contacted me and said, "Can I come along to your dedication?" I'm like, "Okay, who's this crazy person?" But the things that we've done. So yeah, I'm quite happy to go the distance when it comes to remembrance. And it was an absolute privilege and honour to go, to do that 400-mile round trip. But the payoff was priceless. So yeah, so a great day out.
So you say 400 miles. Well, let's calculate that up to 4,000 miles because that's what you did, didn't you? And this is what the result was. Now, you're talking about
Yeah.
getting stressed over one in Brighton, but I can't imagine what it's like organising one from 4,000 miles away. So tell us about
Yeah.
this.
Okay, so there we go. We've got photographs there, and that is Lincoln Cemetery. I think it's called Blue Island, and it's about 20 miles south of Chicago. And just to talk you through this, so the picture on the left-hand side is the headstone for James Henry Cleggett. Now, James Henry Cleggett was part of the committee of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. He was born in Rochester, New York in 1845, came to London in about 1907, never said why. And he was an entrepreneur, self-made man. He'd spent time in Galveston, put to hard labour. He never had any family. And because my forebear was member 8 of the London branch of American Civil War veterans, George Denham, and James Cleggett with member 11. They were both there on the inaugural meeting of the London branch in September 1910. And the more I got to know about James, as you know, I've written a book about him called The Landsman and the Lieutenant. And in April 2022, my cousin Sarah and I, just as a big detour, we were driving back to Chicago from Nashville after walking in the footsteps of George Denham, and we went to Lincoln Cemetery, and I realised that James Cleggett didn't have a headstone. Well, that became a bit of an itch, and I kept scratching that itch, and it was like, I've got to do something about this. This is knowing what I know about James Cleggett. And so you can see our vice president in the far picture on the right hand side, Stuart, wearing kind of like a check shirt, wearing a London branch descendant badge there. Stuart and I got to know each other. He's involved in obviously the Monumental Project because he did that great work with the cast, which I then collected that trip as well. And yeah, so we basically managed to. Well, I worked with the local Sons of Union veterans of the American Civil War. You've got Lee, who is next to Leela Sane, who was part of the local post of the Sons of Union veterans of the Civil War, and we collaborate together, and the outcome was this fantastic dedication cemetery where people came along. It was really well attended, and we took along the London branch banner. You can't see it in that photographs, but you know that obviously we've recreated that London branch banner, and it's just for me. I did end up crying because it was just a fantastic ending. Because finally we all agreed that we were James Cleggett's family for that day. Now, the guy in the middle, Luther Johnson, um, very similar, probably in our outlook, about raising awareness. He's very enthusiastic. He runs the History on Wheels museum organisation, and they're really keen to. Luther does a lot of work in terms of raising awareness about the involvement of black soldiers and sailors, African Americans. Not everybody's obviously American born, but their role in the American Civil War. So it was a bit of a privilege because obviously once I met Luther, I realised exactly what kind of work he's doing there. So yeah, it was a great day. James got like a free gun salute. He had an honour guard where they were fire. They did a fire in their rifles. It was just, and of course, oh, and I'll also let you know that I call them Lincoln reefs. So that reef that is at the base of James Cleggett's headstone is the same reef, because obviously you and I will lay wreaths at Lincoln statue in London for Remembrance Day and Memorial Sunday. That reef lay at the foot of Abraham Lincoln's statue in London, and then I took it to America and made sure that I laid it. If it's good enough to lay at the feet of Abraham Lincoln, then it's most definitely good enough to lay at the headstone of James Henry Cleggett. They kept that. You can also see there's a very small London branch hand flag, and I also made sure that I took a cap that said USS Morning Light, which I gifted to somebody at the dedication, so that everybody had some connection with James there. So yeah, great day. Still quite stressful because obviously we had to drive to the cemetery, but there was a lot of good outcomes from that trip, including obviously me bringing back the plaque that Stuart's designed for our monument that we're fundraising for in the UK.
Excellent. Now, you also got a tour of, because again, there is a
Yeah,
replica of the London, the one
yeah,
that's placed obviously in Parliament Square in London.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a direct replica.
yeah.
So how was your trip around, touring around? There's two in Washington, is Washington, sorry, Chicago. So yeah, how was that?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, the thing is, Daz, I suppose anything to do with America, I love anyway. But and that statue of Abraham Lincoln was unveiled in the late 1890s. Thousands of people turned out for it. It's in Lincoln Park in Chicago. I think that's right, because there's and yeah, I went there with Stuart. As I say, there's a couple of statues from memory up there, but it was great to go up there to reconnect with Stuart as well was really an absolute treat. To look at, you've got like the John A. Logan statue in Chicago, and obviously John A. Logan's General Order 11 is something that we are going to incorporate in the monument that we're fundraising for as well. Fantastic. But I always think about the plinth. So you've got the statue, Augustus St. Gaudens statue in Chicago, and the one in London is obviously a replica on it, but the plinth in London is higher, so you can't touch Lincoln's feet in London, but you can at the one in Chicago. I quite like the one in London. I think it's better, certainly on the plinth, but yeah, that's it. I'm just going to park that one. That's how I see it. And both lovely statues, but I just think the plinth in London just makes it stand out a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, he has his own area, so you know it's
Yeah,
because he's quite a big, like I said, it's a big monument. But yeah, so John A. Logan, I did a podcast on that with
yeah,
an author a little while back. So go and check that out. That's on there. John A. Logan, interesting character, really influent. Oh, I can't say that word. Can you
yeah.
say that word for me?
He's very influential, and obviously you've
Influent.
got.
Yeah, I still can't say it. Sorry. But
But
anyway,
you think about General Order 11,
yeah,
where and I remember Jay Rarick, who obviously we got to know when we started, who lives in Virginia, and he said, because we were looking at ideas about what we could put on our monument in the UK, and he said, "What about General Order 11?" And I think about those words about,
yeah,
using the choicest flowers of springtime when we do these dedications that that will that basically that we will when other I think it's when other eyes grow, memories fade about the services of these veterans, that we will not, that our memory of them will not fade, that we'll always remember them, which is why things like these podcasts are a good way of remembrance, etc. So I love the word in General Order 11, but forgive me, I can't remember it ad verbatim, but I know the spirit of it, and I
yeah.
like it.
And also the dedication was filmed, so that's on our YouTube channel. Go and
Yeah,
check that out. It's under hashtag the Monumental Project. And also Gina did a video about John Cleggett and
yeah,
went around and did a little bit of filming in Chicago, which is also available. So go and check those out.
yeah, yeah.
Now
So
what?
it was
Sorry.
like yeah, it was basically like a walking in the footsteps of James Clay. What I liked about it is that when um, Stuart was giving me a bit of a drive around the city, it occurred to me that we were about half a mile from where James Cleggett um, lived in these final days. And it was great because it's one of those places that has remained as it was. So it's south side of the city. And that was me. I mean, just go to where all these different places where James Cleggett had his shop and his business, and just go to these places. But to go to where I know that he lived at was a really special experience. I always remember when I went to Lookout Mountain, I've been, this winter, Daz, I know that you've been on your holiday overseas. This Christmas, I've been in Fort Fisher. I've been on the march to Chancellorsville. I've revisited Lookout Mountain, and I've done this through the lens of these London branch veterans as I write about them. And it's such a joy that when you write about these people and then you go to where they served. I'm just going to add this. You know that when you and I went to Virginia and you said to me, because obviously I don't know much, I only know the Civil War through the lens of the people that I want to remember. So every day is a school day. But I remember when you and I went to Virginia and you said to me, look, a lot of the Civil War was fought in the Virginia. I think no truer phrase, because invariably when I'm writing about these London branch veterans, they served in Virginia, the Battle of the Crater, Fredericksburg, you name it. I mean, the amount of times I've visited Fredericksburg this winter in my mind's eye, and the fact that I really appreciate it that you invited me to America, that you and I and Tyler, we went to Fredericksburg for the symposium, etc. What an absolute privilege. But I feel it's even more exciting because I write about these places and then we get to go there. It's fantastic. And that's what happened with James Cleggett. I'll park that one, Daz, because I could keep going on about it.
Now, I want to know what it was like for you. And you did mention, obviously, on the way back, you had to carry something onto the plane. I want to know what their reaction was like when you came through with this.
Oh, goodness. So, yeah, I mean, it's quite heavy, but look at the details. So that's the finished product of the uppermost part of our plaque. So you can see the word in there. You can see this is obviously Stuart's design. It's bespoke to us, and obviously I'll quickly talk you through it. You can see the African American sailor there on the right hand side. No surprise, the model for that was James Henry Cleggett. Then you can see the soldier on the left hand side, and then in the middle you see the woman who represents the widow and the nurses. Now, you can't really see it in the back of that picture, but there are silhouettes, and I wanted those silhouettes to go in there to be those people who we may never know were involved in the Civil War. Obviously, our research is ongoing. So there's lots of nuances and subtle references in that plaque. So the reaction, yeah. Well, I had to get a bag for life. I couldn't put it in. I had to take it as carry-on. So I had to put it in a bag for life, wrap a big blanket around there because Stuart kind of go. And then I took it on as carry-on. And unfortunately, it's a sufficient size that I could put it in the, like the overhead locker of the plane coming back. Yeah. I mean, part of the mission, I need to stress that when I went to the James Cleggett, the trip had two reasons. Number one, to honour James Cleggett, and I was going to go the distance on that. And number two, to meet obviously Stuart and bring back the plaque. This is an entirely self-funded enterprise. No fundraising resources that we've got so far concerning that monument was spent as part of that trip. We use our fundraising not just for the monument, but we'll use that to pay for things like the customs duty when we get headstones, the incidental expenses that come with running a dedication, getting things like wreaths and stuff like that. So we are always looking for funding. But I need to stress that wonderful plaque that was so heavy was funded through the kind donations of people. So yeah, good reception. I mean, obviously, when I had to check in at Chicago, they weren't funny about it. I just carried it on.
There you go.
Went through the security, that conveyor belt, no issues. It was good.
Excellent, thank you. And yeah, so now obviously you did then go back to America, as you alluded to.
Yeah.
And we went to the Emergency of War Symposium. We're not going to dwell too long on our trip because we did so many things.
Yeah.
But one of the most important things for us was obviously walking in the footsteps of John Davis. So
yeah.
We went to the USS Tulip site. and you got to touch the banks of the Potomac River where John Davis
Yeah,
started, well, went down and on that
yeah.
ship. So explain, and you got a bit emotional, and there is a video for that, ladies and gentlemen. Go and check that out. But yeah, Gina, tell us a little bit about how emotional that was for you.
Oh my goodness. And you caught me off guard because you videoed it, didn't you? And I started crying. But again, I believe that sometimes people can create amazing ripples in their life that play forward far, far after they've long passed away. You think George Denham created some ripples. I remembered him. I met you. Further ripples were created, and you and I have met people, and done some amazing things together. And that's how I feel about John Davis. He was a missionary for 30 years in Bermondsey. He could do what a Grand Army of the Republic tried to do, but could not do. So John Davis in August 1909, Joseph Emerson Ewell of Binghamton, New York, went to Liverpool, tried to create a Grand Army post. They couldn't get sufficient people to take commander. And then you get this missionary, John Davis. I'm convinced he had ADHD. At the age of 71, decided, after meeting all these veterans, to create a post called the Grand, obviously the London Branch of American Civil War Veterans. Had he got killed when the USS Tulip went down in November 1864, then lots of the positive ripples that he created would never have happened. You know, that he allowed veterans to stay at his address. He used to write lots of letters, as I found, to the pension bureau, advocating for these veterans. So if he had gone down on the USS Tulip, then you and I probably, none of the things that you and I often talk about would have ever happened. Everything he did was creative and groundbreaking. And so therefore to walk on hallowed ground, I'm feeling emotional now, to walk on hallowed ground at St Inigo's Bay, where that monument is, and to pay our respects to John Davis was an absolute must. And it's funny, Dad, how sometimes your brain is in sync with mine, because obviously we knew we were going to the symposium, and I didn't really know how far St Inigo's Bay, Maryland was in relation to where we were going. But then when you went, we're going to go to John Davis's, the marker for the USS Tulip. And of course, as you know, I don't know whether you've included the pictures there, but we also went to Point Lookout where the Confederate POW camp was, which was part of John Davis's story, where the USS Tulip was tasked to patrol the waters around there. So really, really important homage to us. I feel as though I would have felt a lot of shame if you and I hadn't have gone to the Tulip Memorial in St Inigo's Bay. And yeah, you know as well as I do, whenever we've got a situation to deal with, or I always say, what would John Davis say? I think I'm kind of in love with John Davis. But I just like the fact that he's such a change agent. I'm always in awe of people who walk the walk and talk the talk.
Well, I
So
think he was a mover and shaker, as you often say, and but yeah,
yeah,
this was for me probably the highlight of the trip.
yeah,
But Point Lookout, I will say, Legend of a very, very powerful place.
yeah.
Got me a little bit emotional. Amazing monument there, amazing. You know, um, yeah, I
Well,
mean,
they've recreated some of the stockade, and I know we've done a video about it already, and in different. But I think when we were at the end of July and August, wasn't it? And we were
mhm.
getting eaten alive by
Oh yeah,
critters
yeah.
and bugs and what have you. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is just tip of the iceberg, really. What those
And the
poor,
humidity,
oh, oh goodness,
yeah,
yeah,
just
yeah.
sweaty, very sweaty.
I think Point Lookout was an important part of this because I knew what his role was on the USS Tulip, and the fact that then we went up to Piney Point and we started meeting. But I think the thing is, wherever you and I went, Dad, the reason why we were so delayed on that trip is people were asking us what were we doing. So we were able to tell John Davis's story, and we were giving out London branch member cards. information about John Davis. So we kind of, we created more memories for people, and we raised awareness of what he did on the Tulip. I mean, from memory, I think the USS Tulip Memorial is quite unique in the fact that it's one of the smallest official, I think, memorials, in the States, for where people are actually memorialized there, if that makes sense. So I think, I don't know if there's graves there. From memory, I can't remember, but it does stand out as quite a unique location. And St Inigo's Bay, which is just at the background there, is where John Davis came in after spending an hour in the frozen waters of the Potomac, and then recuperated at St Inigo's Bay, until he was given a new position. I found out the other day as well, he tried to get compensation for his uniform and everything that he lost on the Tulip. And I think it went to Gideon Wells, but it certainly went up to the chain of command in the Union. And they went, no, sorry, because you're an officer now, you're not going to get a cent. So yeah, John Davis, Inigo's Bay, beautiful area, great experience, very emotive. And it was certainly unfinished business until we went there. And I'm glad we went there.
Excellent. Next picture, I'm just going to do a little explanation, then you can add a teeny bit to it. But I didn't put all the pictures of the trip there, just because there's quite a few pictures to go through. But and the next few slides are a little bit mishmash a little bit. But we did go to Appomattox, but we had an amazing breakfast, and Gina got me to try a delicacy. Now, we went to Granny B's in Appomattox, so a massive shout out to the ladies that run the cafe there, or diner, whatever you want to call it. Now, that mug I brought home with me, and I drink my coffee out of it every morning, ladies. So thank you so much for that.
I don't know if you can see it, guys, because I've got my Granny B's. Got
yours right there. Now, I drink my coffee out of that every day. I love that mug. So attached to it. Amazing breakfast. But Gina, tell everyone what you made me try.
Okay, so there's a couple of things in America that I quite like, and you don't often get them, but thank goodness that you can get them in the state of Virginia. Number one, we went to somewhere that did, I think it's A&W root beer. So when we came back from St Inigo's Bay, there was a diner for A&W root beer that did everything. I was like in seventh heaven. Root beer, ice cream, you name it. Then Frickles. Fried pickles. I love fried pickles. And again, I managed to get them in Virginia. And then something, I mean, as I said earlier, I love America. There's one thing, I mean, I'm obviously game for anything in terms of eating experiences, drinking experiences, and that is grits. Now, I first heard about grits 20, 30 years ago when I was driving around Florida, and they sound so wonderful. Grits. Nearly anything I taste in America always generally is nice. But grits, I'm not so sure. Now, I've had people say, oh, yeah, we should try them with sugar. You should try them with melted cheese on. Now, I usually use you as my kind of, I'll say, Daz, try this. Try Calvados from France. You'll go, oh, no, I don't like it. So I tried to get you to try grits. And as much as Granny B's was such a wonderful diner, even their grits certainly didn't float your boat.
No. I'm a fussy git anyway, but yeah.
I don't know. If any of your listeners at this part of it might have a view on grits, but I remain to be convinced that grits. I don't know. I don't know what to say about grits, but I'm just going to park grits. Let's just park grits. I will give a toast to Granny B's with their mug.
Okay, Gina, so we also visited Petersburg, and this was the day before Appomattox, but we won't go into all that. And we were late because of certain things, and again, we're not going to go into all that. I still have more content to upload and edit and stuff, and so you'll get to see all this stuff later on. But we did go and visit the crater. We did an amazing video, and of course, it was just an amazing day, wasn't it?
That, I mean, I like it when you give me special missions, because you're like, Gina, I've got a mission for you. I'm like, okay, so what's this mission? He said, I want you to find some British people that had served at the Battle of the Crater. Now, forgive me because I can't remember their names, but you know what I quite liked about that? That we didn't remember them, and we did a video. So obviously, as you said, that's out there. Do you know what I like about it, Daz? It is one of those few occasions that we could replant the Union Jack on Virginian soil.
Oh, and it went down lovely with Tyler and well, Tim, I think, turned around. And we didn't do it to offend anyone, I promise.
No, it was done in good intent. It was just obviously in respect of the British, those unsung heroes whose lives were lost at the Battle of the Crater. But it did occur to me that also on Virginia that we relay a British flag. But again, we can park that. We can park that with grits.
Yeah. Excellent. Right. I'm going to go back again because I had to. Again, my slides are all over the place today. I apologise. But I'm going to slowly go back. You can get a preview of what's coming up in a moment. But yeah, 1 second. Yes. So the Emergency War Symposium this year was 1864. Obviously, it being 2024, it was 160th anniversary. Now, we went to start off the symposium. Dr. Kurt Fields, who is a great advocate for us, for Monuments UK Veterans of the American Civil War. Kurt is a great friend of mine. Now, of course, he plays the great Ulysses S. Grant, and we went to
Massaponax
Church, which is which is where they had a council of war. And we did a publicity shot with Mr. Grant himself with our London branch banner. Again, I didn't really get to see his talk because I was too busy filming content and taking pictures, but I know you enjoyed it, didn't you, Gina?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. With a lot of this, Daz, because I only know the Civil Wars, as I said earlier, through the lens of the people that I write about, the London Branch American Civil War veterans, and also obviously other veterans in the UK. So often Grant is talked about, I served under General Grant, we were marching in all weathers, I ended up getting rheumatism, that kind of thing. But then to meet the man who, Dr. Kurt Fields, who portrays Ulysses S. Grant, it was just sublime. And I was just, being in Massaponax Church, looking at the graffiti that's up on the balcony there, it was just incredible. And that London Branch banner, I just love taking it anyway. It's easy to carry, and to get Kurt stood there with us with that London Branch banner was quite important. And it's just nice. And as I say, he's now an honorary member of Descendants of the London Branch as well. So
excellent. Okay, so we did some more walking in the footsteps. So we went up to London, myself, president of Descendants, and of course we had secretary not secretary, sorry, Tom. What's Tom?
Oh, Tom is treasurer.
Treasurer
of the Monumental Project,
and member Greg Jackson, who's a real big supporter of everything we do. And so let's talk about our trip up to London. I think it was in October, was it?
October the 3rd.
That's the one. Yes, or around about that time, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got. I don't know if we can talk. Basically, you were writing a chapter for a book, and we were kind of looking for ideas. And you said, well, what about kind of maybe like a walking tour for those people who come to London who want to walk in the footsteps of American Civil War veterans, but in London? And so obviously I went away and did some research, and we'd already talked to Civil War Trails while we were at the symposium, and I still feel there's some mileage that at some point in history that there could be a Civil War Trails plaque in an iconic location in London that is attributed to the London branch. So you can see on the left there with the Civil War Trails logo, you can see Tom, you can see yourself, and you can see Greg. And whilst you haven't got the original picture, you are standing in the exact positions that John Locke, Arthur William Fraser Smith, and Charles Edward Loyola Wright of the London Branch veterans stood in about 1925 with Elizabeth Swartout, who was a president of the Women's Relief Corps. And so they did this photograph, and that church, although most of it was destroyed in World War II, that the main tower where that original photograph was taken still exists now, and it's just it's in Westminster Bridge Road, I think, and so you can still go there. Definitely is on the Civil War trails. And then the picture on the right, you've got the then photograph that was taken in 1917, where the London branch met Pershing's Doughboys when the opening of the Eagle Hut YMCA took place. I think it's called Montague Street or Montague Place, and you can still visit that now. And that's opposite Somerset House in London. So we've kind of created the then and now. You can see obviously the arch of the building just behind Greg Jackson there is holding the Union flag there. So yeah, I love going to those places to recreate these then and nows.
And I mean, as you said, the church there, the tower, that's
Yeah,
not a church now, but obviously that was the first time we'd visited that particular
yeah,
spot. I had anyway.
yeah,
But one really important spot, and I've got to give them a shout out because they really open to us and they let us in, didn't they? Even though
yeah,
we wasn't gambling, and that is obviously this place. It's a
yeah,
casino now. It's in Leicester Square.
yeah,
But this is where the London branch met, I believe, to watch Gettysburg,
yeah.
an older version of Gettysburg, the movie.
Yeah, from memory, I think it's 3 to 4 Coventry Street. As you say, now it's a casino, but we explained why we were there and we were walking in the footsteps of the London Branch. So what had happened is I'll explain. So a month before the Battle of Gettysburg, film was distributed across the UK in September 1913. John Davis got a private audience with the company in what is now Chinatown, and he went along and basically they gave him a private screening of the film. And so a month later, he was able to bang the drum and get allegedly 50 London branch veterans to come along, and they were treated to a banquet at Frascati's restaurant, which is now in Oxford Street and is a Primark. But they went along and had this, like, you had like Robert Noyes Fairbanks, who was part of the American Society in London. You had lots of movers and shakers. And then I went and saw the film. Now, the interesting thing is, as I say, I'm doing lots more research about it. That decor, and obviously the cinema had, and the decor hasn't really changed that much. So we had the privilege of being able to see what they saw, and they were rubbing shoulders with, you had, I think, Baden Powell. You had lots of really important dignitaries present at filming in September. So this, we were really lucky to be able to. It was a bit of I always think John Davis is looking over our shoulder because obviously we went in and we were told, no, you can't do any filming. And then we saw a meeting taking place, as you recall, inside the casino. And I went up and said, look, are you the management here? And they said, yes. And I said, is it possible we could do some filming? Because we're trying to put these premises, on the Civil War trails as a place linked to the American Civil War and through the veterans. And thank goodness they were quite, well, not quite pro, but 100% pro. They said, yeah, that's not a problem. So yeah, it was wonderful to go in there. There are no pictures that survive of the London branch veterans in the cinema, but we were blessed, funny enough, through the Descendants to get a photograph of those London branch veterans at Frascati's. And I'm obviously writing about that at the moment for the book that I'm doing.
Excellent. Now, there is more footage of this inside here and what Gina was talking about, but I'm holding off on that for the moment because there's an important project going on with Emerging Civil War and the American Civil War Roundtable UK, which involves a book, and it's going to sort of come out, out around that sort of time that we're going to start, advertising this amazing book that's in the pipeline. Now, also, not only that, we finished our night. At the telescope for a
Yeah.
drink, which I don't have a picture for either because I felt that I wanted to keep a few things back for this
Yeah.
video that's coming out. But again, we was very lucky there, and the stars aligned for that one, didn't it, Gina?
So the telescope, as you've called it, is obviously what John Davis nicknamed the railway arch at Bermondsey Street on account of its very narrow width and length. So it was about 20 feet wide and about 100 feet in length. So we went along. We'd been all over London that day. We'd been to St Paul's. We'd done, and then eventually I said, "Look, let's do the grand finale as at where the London branch veterans held their reunions." Of course, we turned up and they were having a private party. But the stars aligned, as you said. So we were showing, we or chatting amongst ourselves, looking at the then and now photographs. And of course, some of the people at the private party asked us what we were doing, and we explained. And they said, "Come in, and you can have a drink on us." And so the stars aligned. We were very thankful that again some kindness was again demonstrated towards us as the management of the the casino also demonstrated that. I always like all this, Daz, that we tell our story, and rather than people get anti, they're quite interested and engaged with it and show some kind of act of kindness. So, as I say, I always think John Davis is looking down on us, saying
Well,
that go
100%.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to talk about. So just quickly, just want to shout out again, like Gene said, to Civil War Trails. Love all the work you guys do. Thank you very much. There will be a link for Civil War Trails in the podcast description. But the next thing, so we came up with an idea of for Descendants of the London branch of US Civil War veterans. Now we have a meeting every now and then
Yeah.
to get a guest on, and of course, while you was in America, as we've already alluded to, you met Dr. Kurtfield's Ulysses
Mhm.
S. Grant, and he did an amazing presentation for us, didn't he?
Yeah. So I asked Kurt if he would do a presentation for Descendants of the London branch. And it was great because I obviously showed him some locations, and this picture is obviously General Ulysses S. Grant in his study. And when I said to him, "Look, could you just talk us through that photograph?" But as you know, and I know, Daz, and we'll obviously let the listeners know, that is the location that Ulysses S. Grant met Robert E. Lee again to ask him if he would consider getting all of the Confederate forces to surrender. So it's in terms of Appomattox Courthouse, it's sort of, I'd say it's kind of off the beaten track unless you know what it is and
Mhm.
where it is and what its significance is. So obviously, you and I went there. You educated me about its significance. There is a marker near there as well, and obviously there's a marker there. And then we've got Kurt to talk about it. But I found that most of the descendants who participated in that meet and muster, as we call them, for Descendants, found it to be a really interesting and engaging event. And I do hope we can secure the attendance of General Grant again.
Yes, I agree. And again, ladies and gentlemen, that whole presentation is available on American Civil War and UK history under the playlist hashtag the Monumental Project, so you can watch the whole thing and enjoy it. Let's just quickly talk about this because it was a little bit disappointing. We didn't get the support we needed, but unfortunately, John came third. We tried to get a blue plaque, didn't we? But we will try again in the
Yeah.
future. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, actually, considering the number, I think obviously you had Stock, Aiken, and Waterman came first, You had Francis Rossi's Status Quo come second, and then you had a missionary from Bermondsey who passed away on January the 5th, 1917, came third. I don't see that as a fail in my book. There were about I think 11 or 12 contenders.
Oh wow, I didn't know there was that many.
Yeah. It wasn't just three people. There were 12 contenders, different, obviously, Stock Aitken and Waterman being one of those contenders. So the fact that John came third, for me, whilst it wasn't the blue plaque, and I'm sure there's some more work we can do about, I didn't see that as a fail. I think that's representative of the fact that the endeavours of a man who passed away in 1917 are still appreciated by people, just over 100 years later. So, yeah, third, you've got to be in it to win it, Daz. And at the end of the day, I think he, whilst we didn't get him the blue plaque, it doesn't mean, what do we say in these things? To be continued.
Exactly. So now I got up to a lot of stuff in the end of June, and I decided to take myself off down to Wiltshire. And I say that in a Wiltshire accent. Well, I think it is. Anyway, if it isn't, I'm sorry. But I went to the Chalk History Festival. It was one of the best things I've ever attended. For someone that likes talking about history, and I have verbal diarrhea of history, to be able to do that with other people that also have verbal diarrhea and love history. And I will say I did not enjoy plastic camping. I prefer camping in the Civil War tents, but I had more room. But yeah, I visited Chalk History Festival. Now, the main aim was to meet a very famous historian, British historian, who runs History Hit UK. So big shout out to Dan Snow. I collared him, as he said, and of course he's so tall. I saw him walking up. I actually loitered around and waited for him on purpose. I did actually meet Dan Jones as well. I embarrassed myself in front of Dan Jones. I met James Holland, which is a real pleasure at the bar. Yeah, James is a great laugh. We had a few pints and a few laughs together. I met loads of other great historians as well, but my main aim was Dan Snow, and the result was this. So we ended up going on History Hit UK's show, podcast, and the British Veterans of the American Civil War. And of course, it's on there. At some point, at the moment, it's still a bonus episode, so I think you have to pay to listen to it. But at some point, it will become available for the general public. But Gina, that was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I think probably captured the attention of Dan, and obviously we've got his researcher, James, where we were talking about Samuel Lander Howe, who died on the 26th of December 1940. Bear in mind, World War II had just started, and yet Samuel Howe had been part of the 2nd New Jersey Cavalry in the American Civil War, and he was one of the last veterans that we know of in the UK of the Civil War with verifiable service. There were a few people who claimed to have served, but very questionable. But we've got his service file, and we know James served, and obviously James is Samuel Lander Howe, beg your pardon, is one of the one of the Civil War veterans that we managed to get a headstone for, and who will be up for our next dedication. So yeah, chatting to Dan was a real fantastic opportunity. He was obviously interested in the experiences of my forebear, George Denham, who served in the 111th Pennsylvania Volunteers. And actually, I think Dan, when he found out that George had served, his son Alfred Denham had served and got killed on the first day of the Battle of Lewes in 1915, and then Jack Denham, or John Denham, was killed in action on the retreat to Dunkirk. Really interested Dan too. So yeah, it was a good podcast, really engaging. And as Dan said, and let's hope it happens, he said, let's keep the conversation going. So let's hope we can keep that conversation going and talk about more people.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I'll leave a link for that in the podcast description. Okay, so this is huge. And again, he might not be one of the most popular men on the planet, but he is currently the US president.
Okay.
Only for a couple more days, mind you. So, Gina, tell us about this important letter that you received.
Oh, hot off the press. Yes. So this is a presidential certificate that will come when you apply for a memorial marker, a headstone for American Civil War veterans or any veteran. So just for those of your listeners who don't know, the United States government will provide at no cost a headstone or a marker for any veteran of any conflict that served the United States. Now, as I say, there are hidden costs with this. Unfortunately, we end up having to pay customs duty on these headstones. But Henry Nathaniel McGuinness served with the 65th New York. He was a good friend of Samuel Lander Howe, who we mentioned earlier. And as I've established, John Davis in November 1916, when Henry McGuinness sadly passed away, John Davis went all the way from Bermondsey up to Derby to pay his respects to Henry. Now, the reason why I think he did that is because Henry and Sam Howe had gone to London earlier that year, because it meant that articles referenced two men from the West Midlands who came down. Henry McGuinness, his surname was really Magnus, and he was born in North London and went out to America, apparently changed his name because his family did not agree. Well, they were worried because he was Jewish, whether his faith would cause him problems serving in the Civil War. And after the Civil War, he became a resident of Derby. So the certificate signed by President Biden has recently arrived, which is indicative that Henry's headstone, in theory, should be coming our way soon, which means hopefully we'll be doing a double dedication in 2025 for Sam Howe and Henry McGuinness, who are both buried in the same cemetery up in Derby. So yeah, this one. So it's going to be huge because we've never done a double dedication before. God knows what the stress is going to be
Even
like.
more stress for you. Yeah. Oh my goodness, double one. I didn't realise it was a double one, but there you go.
We can get a 2-for-1 deal on that.
There you go,
Basically,
yeah.
I don't know how we're going to do it. I'm sure.
I'm also talking to other creators that hopefully are going to come and cover that for us. So
Brilliant.
watch this space. Yeah, they've got huge platforms, and so hopefully we can get that word out there. But again, that's all. And again, that leads into the next one, Gina. So obviously we've discussed 2024, and there's lots of stuff we did miss because we've done so much stuff the last year. If you know, it would be longer than an hour and 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or whatever this podcast is. But obviously 2025, hashtag the Monumental Project. Happy New Year, everyone. What's happening?
Okay, right. First on the radar, do you want me to give you what I think is going to be happening in the early month? Okay. As you know, I'm writing my book solely about the London branch. It's probably going to end up being 2 volumes. Because I've been writing it for the last couple of years. I'm finding out so much information, and I just feel as though I do them a disservice if I try and just squeeze it into one. So it's probably going to be 2 volumes. But of course, the writing of this and the research carries with it a great burden, because I've got to publish it, because I can't let this story die with me. Now, one of the other things that I'm hoping to do in the next coming weeks is that we're quite privileged that we've now got a member of, in fact, we've got a couple of members of Descendants of the London branch who are involved with cemeteries. I believe Brockley is one of them, I stand corrected, but the other one is Nunhead Cemetery. And so you've got Friends of Nunhead Cemetery, which was established quite a long time ago. And there are 5 London branch veterans buried at Nunhead Cemetery. Number 1, you've got John Davis. So for me, we've been to St Inigo's Bay, so we might as well go to South London and pay our respects to John Davis. You've got John Dow, who was in the 1st New York Dragoons, and you've got Henry Hawkins, who lived around the corner to the Bermondsey Gedling Street. He literally, well, next time we go there, Daz, we'll have to see if we can find. He lived at Monarch Buildings, and he was in the 82nd New York Volunteers. So for me, the next one on the radar will be Nunhead Cemetery. And then I'm hoping as well, to me personally, to go on a field trip to Washington with a little sprinkling of Virginia thrown in, because obviously I need to get the pension files for these London Branch veterans. And I kind of figured, based on our trip to the symposium last year, that I might go on another trip back to Virginia, the to be continued kind of stuff.
Ooh, exciting. And
Yeah.
we are hoping, obviously, in November. And if it doesn't happen this year, it will happen in the future. We would like to go to the Memorial March that happens in Gettysburg in
Oh,
November.
yeah.
Now, that
Yeah.
has been a dream of both of ours for a little while now. But we would like to carry the London branch banner, basically,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the march that they do there. So,
We have got some contacts there, and I've got
yeah,
Ralph Alamano, who's a
yeah.
descendant of a Civil War veteran, a member of SOSCAN, the Southern
Yeah, so he's
Skirmish.
in the 4th US Infantry. Yeah, so
That's right.
one of us.
He's got some contacts, and that conversation we're going to have to build on that. But as like you, Daz, I've got so many things going on
Yeah.
that it's
It,
what do I
it,
focus on?
we will focus on it, and we'll hopefully get there. But all that is left to say, ladies and gentlemen, is firstly, before we do say that, sorry, Gina, we do need people's money, don't we?
We do,
But
yeah.
not in a a pushy way. As you always say as well, if you can't donate money, then donate a little bit of time by sharing a Facebook post or something like
Yeah.
that. But Gina,
Yeah.
just let everyone know how they can contribute to this endeavour.
Yes. So we have a PayPal account. So you can donate just using PayPal, and our email address was Civil War UK Monumental Project at gmail.com. So Civil War UK Monumental Project at gmail.com. So you can just donate on PayPal. That way
Hmm.
there's no fees. We do have a Just Giving page, which has got about 600 on it. When you're donating to the Monumental Project, yes, it will support our ultimate aim of creating that one singular monument that obviously we've been working on for the last couple of years. I don't think we're dragging our heels on it either, because you think we started this endeavour in 2022, and I think the fact that we've raised probably about 4,000 towards this monument and other parts of what we're doing is no small feat. But we do need funding, literally because of all the back office admin. So we like to lay a wreath at Lincoln Memorial for Remembrance Day and Memorial Day. We obviously lay wreaths at the veterans when we do the dedications, but of course there comes a cost with a wreath. You're looking at about £20, a customs duty for a headstone, and we want to do at least one, headstone endeavour a year. You're looking at about £150 customs duty. Well, by hook or by crook, we're going to pay this bit invariably, and I've done it myself before. I've paid for it out of my own purse, and we want to sustain what we're doing, but we do ultimately need whatever donations. So if you can't donate financially, please gift of your labours. And all we mean by that is share a post, create a ripple. If you can't donate, but you share what we're doing on social media, somebody else who could donate might make a donation. So we're still achieving our ultimate goal.
Hmm.
So I don't think we're dragging our heels, Daz. And
No,
if people,
I want to look. I want to add a little bit to that. I will just say, look, the way things have gone with this amazing project is things happen when they happen, and
yeah,
we leave it in John Davis's hands
mm,
and the London branch guys. And I can guarantee you at some point in the near future that that will happen. And let me tell you that that day will be a massive celebration.
definitely, yeah. I'm really looking for. I mean, I can taste it because we've got the main plaque. It's here. Stuart is now working already. I've seen the artwork. He's already working on the John A. Logan metal plaque. Now, once we've got that, And then we can start going to the monumental masons to say, this is what we've got. This is our vision of the design. We're already having those conversations with some cemeteries about putting a monument, because it's a bit of a catch-22. We've got to have the metal plaques. Then we've got to go to a monumental mason. And I don't know about you, but monumental mason work isn't my world. So I'm not
No.
in a position. I
Well,
can't.
not a lot of the things haven't been your well, Gina, but you've managed to navigate a lot of them. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure before 2020, whenever you had
yeah,
2021, before you
yeah.
had the dedication for George Denham, that you wasn't, experiencing anything to do with getting
No,
headstones and all that. I mean, come
no,
on, I mean,
no.
you're learning as you go along, and
Yeah,
I
no,
will
you're
say you're
right.
doing an amazing job, and I think we make a pretty damn good team. And there
Yeah,
are other people in the background too, Greg and Tom and everybody else that supports us. I really thank you all. But all that
yeah.
is left to say is thank you very much, Gina.
Thank you, Darren, for allowing me to come on. I feel quite privileged. So this is the first one for
It
2025.
certainly is. So
Oh,
yeah, it's going out as soon as possible, and all that is left to say is cheers.
cheers. Oh, cheers.